Have you ever set out to achieve a dream that you just knew you would absolutely love if it came true? But then as you were experiencing it, you realized that there were parts of that dream that were not meant for you. And so you set out on a completely different path. That's what happened with Molly Szkotak. Listen to her story here. Molly, can you tell us about your early career journey
Sure,
and how you ended up in marketing and branding roles?
sure. Like many people, my journey has been not linear, not a straight line. I really, it all kind of began when I was a kid. So my dad was a journalist, a professional journalist for his whole career. And I kind of, growing up, knew that like my strength was writing and communicating. And I was also just like a total like pop culture junkie, like from the beginning as a child. I went to a liberal arts college in Boston, and I did major in print journalism and publishing because I kind of originally thought I was also really into clothes, fashion, styling. So I thought, I'll work in a magazine in New York. That was kind of the dream, like many young women at the time. I loved my college experience. It was great. And then, like usual, kind of like post grad life was a lot of, just a lot of trying different things. And I did ultimately get a role at a magazine in New York City. And I was a fashion assistant. So I was very lucky to, get that job. And it was like one of the hardest jobs I've ever had. It was just like,
Oh, yeah,
kind
what
of
was so hard about it?
it was almost, I would say, well, the one thing with print and then, of course, journalism is just the
Mhm.
hours are
Okay.
really intense. The pay was not great. It still is not great. And then also, it's kind of the role was a little bit of like a super, like, like a intern on steroids. So it was
Mm.
just any little thing that would come up. Some of it was like very physical. So basically, like maintaining this whole fashion closet that was filled with clothes and accessories. So it was a little bit of everything. So it was very exciting for me at the time, but I did ultimately realize that there was more actual styling in the role. And I just was like, that's really not at all what I want to do. I was sort of more interested on the editorial side. But anyways, it was a great experience for me. And then, I ended up here in Richmond, Virginia about 12 years ago, and I got involved with Mead Supply Co., which was a huge, at that time, in like early to mid aughts, like very widely respected online fashion retailer. So, like e commerce. And it was kind of one of the first to do fashion e-commerce in a very like specific stylized way. So like the website, just beautiful UX, beautiful design, like the design standards were really high. And then also I kind of worked my way up there, but I was doing some editorial. So they had like a very popular blog, and I would, interview designers or artists and do content, do their social content. And this will show my age, but it was when Instagram first launched. So I started their Instagram account officially, and it just blew up. It got so many followers, and this is when like organic social was a thing and you could grow fully organically, which is not exactly the case now. And I just loved that. I loved my job because I did a little bit of everything. It wasn't like I was not just doing one specific function. It was a little PR, a little digital marketing, a little kind of content, editorial, social media marketing. I did events. So that's kind of where I was like, this is what I want, like this kind of role, kind of brand marketing with a little bit. I did love the PR piece of it because I think having a background in journalism really just makes you a much better like PR practitioner because you have an understanding of like what the writer is looking for, and also just what kind of stories would resonate for them.
Mhm.
um so that's kind of how I got started, and I've worked a little bit in like e-com, I've worked for a local high-end men's shirting company, other consumer goods, but I really just love that area because I'm pretty like tech savvy, tech forward. And also again, like I never want to be kind of pigeonholed into one thing. I love doing a lot of, I just love learning. So like learning new platforms or learning new parts of the business is really exciting to me.
And you also worked remotely before
Hmm.
getting into your current role, which we'll talk about in a moment. But
Yeah.
how was your experience? Because I know as a person who works in recruitment, so many people want remote jobs.
Yeah.
Even though the
Yep.
pandemic is over, they want the flexibility, they want the comfort of working from their home. And you had that. What
Yep.
was your experience and what were some of your reasons for not wanting that?
Well, that is really an interesting question because um, I think like remote work prior to the pandemic was not really a thing. I mean, I can't even remember now what it was. Obviously some people did it, but it was kind of for a lot of industries, it was not the norm at all. Um, and I will say that the pandemic did kind of align with when I had my daughter and I was on, maternity leave and then returning to the office after maternity leave. And then very quickly, a month later, everything shut down. So we had no choice. We were forced to go work from home. And then at that time, the company I was working for was based in North Carolina. So, I think it was the pandemic, but also a lot of companies just realized like you can get better talent when you can expand and kind of look outside of your region. Um, but I will say, like, initially forced to work remote without maybe choosing it or having like the tools or the practice, it was a struggle for me. At first, I found it really difficult to, really focus, feel really connected to the work without seeing team members every day. And then I ultimately did enjoy it, but I was just after many years of working fully remote, I did realize that it was not ideal for me because
Okay.
yeah, I feel that I'm a little bit of a mix of introvert extrovert. So, there are definitely like a hybrid model I love because there are some days where I'm like I just working from home in my quiet house, like I can really focus and really get into deep work. And then there's some days where, I love being able to go in an office and see my colleagues. And there is just some magic of like, those kind of ad hoc spur of the moment conversations that happen when you're in an office in the same physical space with people. And I think it's also so important for just like building relationships with your colleagues and rapport and just like having ongoing dialogue. So I'm definitely have done it all different way, but at this point I do love like a hybrid model is kind of my ideal situation.
Okay. And so what ultimately encouraged you to leave that remote job and join the team at the rapidly growing Nightingale ice
Mhm.
cream where
Sure.
you are now?
Yeah. So I again, it kind of went to my last role was in a company that was not based here where I'm located. And I, just realized I was looking for a new challenge, a new category. So I did see that at that time, Nightingale was expanding because we had gotten a big retail account and they were looking for the first time to kind of hire out and build out their like marketing and sales team. Um, and really, it was actually very funny because the job listing was posted on LinkedIn, of course. Um, and it didn't come across my feed organically, but two people, like two former colleagues of mine on LinkedIn, both like separately who don't know each other, like forwarded me the role and were like, you should apply to this. I was like, oh, okay. So I was like, well, and then I think even my husband saw it too. And he's like, oh, you definitely should like apply. Um, so that's kind of how that happened. It was felt a little bit like kismet, like the stars
Mhm.
just aligned. And so, yeah, I've been at Nightingale for over a year now. And I just really, it's been for a marketing person, it's been just like a dream job. It's really fun and it's very exciting to be at a brand where so much is happening, so much expansion all at once. There's many opportunities for me to kind of like stretch my skill set a little bit, learn about new areas that like were completely novel to me, which again is like something I really love at work. Because I just, I can't, I think like when I'm starting to feel stagnant, or if I'm like not learning or up leveling my skills, or I'm not exposed to some new like process or experience, then I'm just really gonna be checked out, to be honest. Um, so so I've been at Nightingale for a little over a year now, and it's been a blast. It's been really, really fun. And also I do love that they are a local to me brand that is going national, but I just it helps me feel more connected to the work. I'm like kind of more passionate about it.
As a marketing professional, it is key to really believe in the brand that you stand behind. If you would like support in uncovering what your deepest and truest passions are so that you can find the right company to align with, be sure to check out the link below so that you can set up an exploratory call with me today. I'm a certified coach and I help creatives to uncover their dream. Now let's continue to listen to Molly's story. I know you mentioned it's becoming a nationwide brand, which is really exciting. And that's a part of the job that you love.
Yep.
But it was founded here in
Yes.
Richmond.
Yes.
So tell me about the founder.
Sure. So, the founder of Nightingale is Hannah Pollock. She's our CEO and president, and she did actually started it with her husband Xavier Mears, who is a Belgian chef who did own a Belgian restaurant here in Richmond that was like very beloved several years ago. And they met in a restaurant, and they, basically Hannah she's actually a former Marine veteran. She, did a stint in culinary school. And after she got out of the Marines, she always just loved cooking and food. And she did so that's essentially how she met her partner. And she literally kind of created the first Nightingale ice cream sandwich as a dessert offering at a restaurant that they worked at together. So it is kind of, a love story. We like to say a product born out of love. And they really started in food service. So, she created the first Nightingale sandwich as a dessert offering, and it just took off. People just couldn't believe it. They loved, thought it was so delicious, so great. And then they started, upping their production more. They ultimately moved to Hatch, which is a kind of like a food production facility warehouse based in Manchester. And that is actually where our production facility is based now. And so really in the beginning, they did so well with food service. So essentially selling to restaurants, to pizza shops, even regionally, lots of food distributor companies picked them up and independent markets. And then they landed in the fresh market. So every fresh market. And that was, a huge step up for them. That was about 5-6 years ago. And then, I think fresh market really helped get a footing on shelf in that kind of like grocery channel. And the funny thing is that other people who shop at grocery stores are also people who work for grocery stores or, buyers, category buyers. So a lot of times that's how people do discover Nightingale is, the buyer at Whole Foods found us at her local, corner store and was like, wow, this is an amazing product and brought us in. So yeah, it's Hannah Pollock is our founder. She's incredible. She's a great leader. And she's really big on culture. And she's, just makes such a really fun celebratory like culture for employees. Like birthdays are huge for her. She makes like a huge deal about every employee's birthday, which is like such a little fun perk. But yeah, it's been really amazing to like get to know her better over the past year. Just because, she really, the whole thing is like her creation, and it's like her baby. So, she's very, very close to the work and, daily operations too.
And you two really hit it off during your interview. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, we did. And she, it's been really fun because, I think like my role, and then of course, like with the C-suite or leadership, you really do, especially with PR, because, we are trying to, pitch her for things like this, for podcast interviews and speaking engagements, because people do invite her. She, speaks on a lot of small business entrepreneurial panels. And she also is at the stage now in the business where she really wants to start helping other, entrepreneurs and small business owners, like help them get started, because, that's like very rewarding to her. But yeah, it is really important for me to like have a great rapport and great relationship with her, because, if I'm also promoting her as the face of the brand and the business, that just really makes everything, all of my pitches better. And also just telling her story, which is so compelling, really gets a lot of like interest and kind of like brand interest for us too.
So outside of the growing of the organization and that being such a exciting part,
Mhm.
what else about this particular company, opportunity really makes it hold the title of it being your dream job?
To me, I would say it's really the product. I mean, ice cream, like people, it elicits such positive emotions for people. Ice cream sandwiches, it's such like a nostalgic product that, gives people warm and fuzzy feelings like about their childhood. And that, like, as a marketer, there's like so much material to work with there. And also the other thing too is the brand, which a lot of this brand building and marketing like happened way before my time. So like I cannot take credit for it, but it really has such a, like, so many just rabid fans who just love the product. And that I think is so important, because you really, as a marketer, you just want to cultivate that and like build on that. So it just makes, everything that you do in the campaigns just so much better. So that's kind of why I think for me. And then also because the other reason is that we're still relatively small. Like, we're growing very fast, but we're still small, that, I do again wear many different hats. And that's, I just kind of, I'm the type of person, like, I need that, or I, would get kind of bored and disengaged. So I like that I'm, involved in so many different things, like maybe product development, and then maybe like packaging design, and then our website, UX, ecom experience, and then a little bit of the financial operations side of it. So I just feel like that overall makes me a better marketer in the long run, just having understanding of how everything like works together.
Okay. That does sound like a perfect role for you as you've
Mm-hmm.
described.
Mm-hmm.
So, as the marketing director at Nightingale, how have you approached building the brand's identity and expanding its reach nationally?
So there's certain channels that we really do mainly focus on. Of course, right now we, doubled our overall retail distribution year over year. So a huge part of that is that, so many more shoppers are shopping on apps or shopping on their phones. It's, of course, people still go and look in store, but there's just the growth of Instacart, of DoorDash, Fresh Direct in New York City. So one big piece kind of our strategy is like making sure we show up strongly on like our digital shelf. So like when you go to target.com or on Instacart, just making sure all of our listings look really beautiful. The packaging is good, is dialed in. The description is all SEO optimized and has all our key brand positioning. So that's one area where there's definitely more focus on this year versus last. Other than that, I think just really like building out the PR strategy, because the kind of organic earned media piece of it, I will say Nightingale again like has done very well in that department. Since the beginning, because the brand, our founder Hannah's story is so incredible. The product is totally unique. There's really like nothing else on the market like it. So that's like another area where I've really put a lot of my efforts into kind of just ramping up product seeding, even just cold pitching new potential outlets, and really just making sure that we're like showing up when people are kind of like talking about our category.
Mhm.
Um, and then another area is really just organic social. So just trying to show more of our brand story, and then like the behind the scenes storytelling on our social media. So all of that, it all is like the flywheel of like it all plays together for brand awareness.
So you mentioned the organic social, and then earlier you touched on that organic social is not as effective as it used to be as far as building an audience. What are some other methods that you would recommend building a social media following, an audience for a brand, since organic may not be as effective?
So what I would say, and my big thing that I always kind of preach, is that it doesn't, of course, it matters what you say about the brand, but what is the most impactful and the most influential is what other people say about you. So to me, what that is product seeding to content creators or foodie influencers, or not even food. They don't need to be in the food category. We've gone viral in the past with creators who are like interior designers who just post about us and have a huge following. So I think to me, it's really seeding like product reviews, even just taste tests. So really building up that like user generated content is huge because it's two pronged. Number one, it's organic. It's out there living in these like worlds, Instagram, TikTok. And then of course search, Google search, predictive AI search, they all pull from these same places. So even like Reddit, so even Reddit is difficult. There's not always a lot you can do proactively as a brand there other than doing advertising, but just social listening to me is huge. So having, what are people saying about the brand and the product on Reddit? Like, where are there opportunities where we could like change our positioning? Or, there's to me, all of that good, bad, critical is like feedback. It's not, necessarily a bad thing. And I do also think that as brands get bigger and become more successful, you're going to get more criticism as a brand, and that's not bad, but I think it is really important that, to kind of listen and kind of get an understanding like of consumer sentiment. So that's been a big thing. And then the other really big part of that is then once you have all those, testimonials, video testimonials, content, photos of real people enjoying your product, and then you can potentially use that on paid ads because they just look much more authentic and real than, something just coming from the brand saying about, how great we are. So that I think has been some area that I've been really kind of pushing on, because word of mouth, if you ever survey your customers, like 80% about how they heard about you, it's like 80% are going to say, oh, through a friend or word of mouth, which, is hard to quantify because it's like not necessarily trackable, but it's really like, that is the name of the game for sure, because they, that's people just want to get recommendations from people they trust and know, like their friends or family, that creator that they follow on TikTok.
Mm-hmm. Okay, wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned that you wanted to rejoin the local community, and that was a big driver as far as finding a position that you could be a part of the team, either in a hybrid situation, maybe in person. So how have you leveraged the community connection as part of your marketing efforts for Nightingale?
Oh, that's a really great question. So I do think from the beginning with Nightingale, it's definitely been a part of their overall kind of brand ethos to include, celebrate the Richmond community. One of the very first logos that Nightingale did was created by a Richmond artist who's like still around. I wish I had it to show you, but it's really amazing. It's like it's a illustration of the train trestle, and there's a train going over, and they're like the train cars are actually ice cream sandwiches, and it's just like really so very Richmond. And even though we've moved away from that logo, it's still something that really like inspires us. So for example, we did a little merch release last year, so a T-shirt, and we worked with this local designer who lives here and who's, does a lot of freelance design and just kind of, I think supporting local creatives is huge. And I always want to do that. Like if we could find someone, a local, designer versus somewhere else, to me that makes so much more sense for the brand. So that's just like one example of like working with a local creative or an artist. And then, we even are, there's so many local stores, like independent markets, have been some of our first great accounts. So, we're even with flavor development, sometimes like there's some inspiration, whether that is a collaboration with a brewery on a flavor inspired by a beer, which Nightingale has done in the past. Those always just really resonate with people.
Being part of a community, to be able to give service to something greater than yourself, can bring great fulfillment. That sense of connection that we're all craving at some level. Be sure to continue to listening to Molly's story.
And then a very silly example is last year for April Fool's Day, we did a joke post with the ZZQ, which is like the best local barbecue in Richmond. It's, Texas style, but they're like Richmonders through and through. And we did a collaboration post on social media that was, saying we're launching like a pulled pork ice cream sandwich. And it was like so silly, but people, I mean, the community just loved the idea, freaked out. We're like actually demanding that we make the flavor. And it was just like every time it just kind of blows us away. I'm like, how cool is that we get to do things like that, even if it's just, for an April Fool's joke.
That's wonderful. I love that the community is really rallying behind the brand and you all are having so much fun, even on April Fools.
Yeah.
So, what advice would you give to other creative and
Mm-hmm.
marketing talent who are looking to take a leap
Yeah.
and join or build a mission driven brand they're
Mm-hmm.
passionate about?
Right. Well, I would say again, the passion is key. And also to me, I think you want to really play to your natural talents. I think again, being really versatile and having a like wide breadth of experience is very important. But at the end of the day, you really want to make sure that like the actual like the work that you're doing day to day is playing to what you're good at, and like what is different, something that you bring to the table that not everyone else has or can do. So like for me, I think my like I would say that like my PR earned media piece is like an area that I'm like very passionate about and talented at. Not to say that there's other areas that I, like there's operations, for example, like I'm just not an operations logistics person, but because of my role in marketing, you have to have a solid understanding of that, whether that's just how all of the systems work together or the shipping and fulfillment of it. And it does make you a stronger employee or business owner to have like a functional understanding of them all. You just don't want to keep forcing something that it's like you're not really loving if it's just starting to feel like a slog. And then another piece of it, I think, is just to be like incredibly clear about your positioning, and like do your homework and do your research, because I think sometimes I am surprised, not necessarily thinking of anyone specific, but it's like you really have to do your due diligence, like whether you're bringing a product to market or a service, like, if you're not researching everything else within that area, and making sure that like there's an actual like white space need for it, like it's just going to be a struggle and you're just going to be like maybe churning and spending money. So I think that being and constantly kind of thinking about your product or market positioning too, because again, things move so fast, and especially in our consumer packaged goods CPG space, like they move really fast. And especially with technology, like everything is just changing and evolving constantly, and just making sure that you are up on what the changes are, because you can so quickly become irrelevant or like obsolete. So that's, I think, one area I would really, recommend.
That's great advice.
Mhm.
So, can you share an example of a time when you had to overcome a significant obstacle or setback in your career? And how did you navigate that challenge?
Sure. So I have, been the victim of layoffs. Um, and especially now, I think it's really relevant because I just know so many people, colleagues that are dealing with layoffs right now. And it just sucks. There's really no other way to say it. It's really, I think that's very hard when people are laid off due to reorganization, economic reasons. And even though, they say, oh, it's not about you, it's not about you at all. It's incredibly hard not to like take it as an ego hit and take it personally.
Sometimes life does throw us a curveball. And with awareness, we can see that even if it is a blow to our ego, there's an opportunity for growth. And that's what Molly is talking about in her situation. Let's continue to hear Molly's story.
I think it is important when that could happen. It's like I think some people like, okay, immediately start looking for jobs. But I think it's okay to allow some time to process what happened, because, our jobs are everything. We spend so many hours of our life at work in our jobs. So, if that is taken away from you without notice, it really feels like the rug has been pulled under you. And I think being, allowing your time to, number one, process it from like an emotional point of view and just get through that, whether it's a day or a week. I think that is important before you start the process of looking for your next job, because I think it'll help you move forward with a clearer head. And then I think, that was an area where I felt, I was really bummed about it at the time. And, had all these feelings about it, but I still think looking back, it was a good experience for me to experience that and know what that's like. And, I had my feelings, and then I, literally had a spreadsheet of jobs, and I applied to like hundreds of jobs. And then within 3 months, I had a new job. So, I mean, not to make it easy, I know the job market, this was, I don't know, 10 years ago, the job market is very different right now. But, I think that just trying not to take it personally, so many people have dealt with layoffs or lost their job. And it's just, to me also, I do think, especially in marketing, it's something that like you kind of, unfortunately, like when there's issues in the business or the money financials are not good, like marketing is often one of the first like teams that they look at, in my experience. But I think it helps you be resilient, and it helps you like build grit, because it's not all going to be easy up and down. Oh, you're just being promoted up, and it's like you're going to have a lot of like bumps along the way.
Yes, no, it's true.
Yeah.
That's a very good point. And thank you for sharing that
Mhm.
part of your life. Um,
Of course.
and I think that's wonderful advice
Mhm.
to process that.
Mhm.
So, Molly, how have you cultivated that sense of purpose and fulfillment in your work?
Oh, I love that question. It's very relevant to me right now. Um, so one thing for me that I really love is I do love working with junior employees, and I love coaching. And even like number one, I would say, uh, if you don't have a career mentor, try to get one. I can't say I have had a ton in my career, but I have had peers. So I have a friend of mine, I definitely have a few friends whose careers I just admire. And they're great friends of mine, but it's a little bit of mentorship too. We talk about work, we talk shop. I get an understanding of like what works for them and what hasn't. So like for me, I really do love, I love like working with younger employees who are like earlier in their career, because no one will really ever tell you like the rules. There's like no rule book. I mean, of course, like you can Google now, but like HR is not going to give you an etiquette handbook of like, this is what's correct, or like, this is how you should book a meeting. So I think like I've really appreciated that when my managers or people with more experience than me have kind of like explain things to me, the unspoken. And that's something that I really like. I love, just working with talented folks. And I think that's one thing that I'm, interested in. And then also just, how can I be of service to my role to other people, and then even within my community. That was another reason why I wanted to work at a local place, is that feeling like, hey, I'm very privileged to be here, so like what unique skills or talents do I have that I can like help within the community, right? So I mean, so silly, but being a member of the PTA at my daughter's school, like things like that just kind of make me feel very like more connected, and like you're investing in where you're at.
If you were inspired by Molly's story, be sure to like this video and subscribe so that you can continue to hear stories that inspire you to go for your dreams. And I also recommend you watch Gina's video, who overcame challenges to create an agency that she loved. Because you deserve to create a career that you really enjoy. You can do it. I believe in you.